What's up, Pine Logical? Gabriel Baker back again. I hope everybody's enjoying their beginning of the March. I'm so excited for this winter to be done. I live in the Midwest, and it's just terrible here sometimes when it comes to winter. I understand the whole point of what winter does, but I just don't like snow. I like warm weather. That's how I am. So, what we're going to be talking about today is what it says in that cute little left corner right there, the Matrix. We're going to be talking about that thing. So everybody has a little bit of an understanding of what the Matrix is, signifies. Most people know it based off the movies with Keanu Reeves as Neo. Other people understand it of where there's certain dystopian writings that came out way before those movies even came out, of Simulacra and Simulation, 1984 by George Orwell. That's a good example. Or some people even kind of understand it just because everybody talks about it in some way, shape, or form. I don't really know if anybody else has noticed that it's kind of been up in the air for quite a while. I think about a month or so. If you haven't noticed that, well, we're going to be talking about it today anyway. So like I said, the Matrix. So everybody has a different understanding about what it is, what it's about, what is controlling us, what isn't controlling us, be it either based on our system, the government political systems, the systems that we implement on ourselves and on others, of how we're kind of in like a box simulation about where we're only perceiving our own reality as our own simulation, or if it's we're used as batteries for an AI sentient civilization, advanced civilization that's way more advanced than we are, or anything like that. So we're going to be talking about as much as I can. I have a lot of information here, a lot. It's a little everywhere, so I'm going to do my best to make sure that I can weave it together into this nice little blanket that everybody can, absorb and have, and we'll just continue on from that. So, I watched all four of the movies to give me a good reference for this. I know that it's probably not the best, but it kind of helps me kind of get a little better of an understanding of the things that I've written down, and it kind of helps me understand a little bit of the things that were definitely necessary for me to pinpoint in this. So I have two philosophers here, one Jean Baudrillard and one Karl Marx. Karl Marx was used for John Baudrillard's information back when he wrote the Simulacra and Simulation, which was published in 1981. And Jean Baudrillard is a French postmodern philosopher, and Karl Marx was a German philosopher around like the 1850s. So Jean Baudrillard wrote the Simulacra and Simulation, published in 1981. Now they both kind of talk about some of the same things, but of course since Karl Marx is a little bit older than Jean, so like he kind of has a little bit of a different outtake, but I kind of wrote a little paragraph that kind of all sums it up together. So Jean pretty much kind of stated that consumer culture possibly distracts us from reality, that we are being exploited by someone or something. So make sure you bookmark that word exploited, because we're going to be using that a lot today. And also, what was the other one? There's another one that I'm going to be talking about, another word that I'm going to be using a lot. So just make sure to bookmark those. So the working class is exploited by the ruling class, or some people might consider this the 1%. But the working class exploitation is only possible because it does not perceive itself as being exploited. Most people could either agree or disagree with that. Are we actually perceiving ourselves as being taken advantage of, or are we perceiving ourselves as being taken advantage of, even though that we're not actually being taken advantage of? So there's a lot of what ifs and buts, but we're not going to be basing on that because we could be sitting here playing what if all day. So to continue on, if we are being controlled, what are we actually giving up? Are we giving up freedom, free will? Are we having set limitations set before us, or are we limiting ourselves? Are we exploiting the entire idea of advancement in general, or is advancement the thing that we're actually trying to exploit? So these are some questions to definitely have to think about. So the next part of this is hyperreality. Our simulations or imitations of reality have become more real than reality itself. So consumer culture has evolved from a state in that we are surrounded by representations or imitations of things that really exist, towards a state in which our lives are filled with simulations, objects that look as if they represent something else but have really created the reality they seem to refer to in such a situation. The world of simulations increasingly takes on a life of its own, and reality itself erodes to the point that it becomes a desert. In the first Matrix movie, they reference this, to where Morpheus takes Neo into that desert dystopian apocalyptic future with the two chairs and the TV, to where he explains to Neo about how humans made the machines, but the machines got so highly advanced that they're pretty much to the point to where they started taking try to take Earth as its own. They were fighting each other for survivability to the point to where they completely destructed the entire world around them, sending them into a desert to the point where it's all just based on survivability between the machines and the humans. So going back to the objects that look as if they represent something, we do have this in our reality. Video games are a great example because we can do things in video games that we can't actually do in real life, being either actually trying to like murder somebody or even hit somebody with a car. There's a lot of things that video games can represent. But the thing is that it's like we don't have to face those repercussions because they are in a simulation. That we are simulated these things so we can actually see what they're like, even though that it's probably nothing even compared close. The other thing would be porn. Porn is another good example because we simulate the idea of porn to give us that simulation of sex that we can pleasure ourselves with. And I think the entire thing of this is the dopamine effect, to where it's like all these things that give us a dopamine simulation of the real thing, but even though that we're not actually experiencing it, that it's not actually compared to the real thing. But the desert part is because that we try to simulate so many different things that it becomes to the point to where we can't simulate anything else. We can't experience anything else because we've already experienced it in some way, shape, or form. So to go back to the working class misunderstands its own position because it's confused and distracted by social messages that give workers a distorted explanation of how they fit into the world. An example would be religion, schools, or ideologies, nationalism or patriotism, that we have so many different things that we all believe that are different to the point to where we're kind of almost exploiting ourselves in a way. But false consciousness to describe the working class as ignorance. The argument that average people are ignorant of their own best interests and exploited by rulers who create and capitalize off of ignorance. So a way that that I can demonstrate this is the demonstration of news, media, and politicians exploit Americans' fear of violence and terrorism to distract us from our true economic and political best interests. So I thought that was actually something that was really, really well put, to be able to the point where, yeah, sometimes we are not focusing on the things that definitely are important to us. We're too busy distracted on the things that definitely do not matter, news, media, outlets, or anything like that distract us from the things that we definitely should be putting our efforts and focus onto. But the thing is that people have free will. People have the free will entirely to either ignore the true things that are for our own best interest, be it either in certain societies or globally, that we are not paying attention to those. We're too busy paying attention to these things that do not matter. Most people kind of already understand this when it comes to fake news and all this other stuff, just because that there are so many things that are being talked about, even though there's like really important things that we should be focusing on, even though that we're not focusing on them because something else is on, or we're too busy trying to figure out why these two people are fighting or anything like that. So there's a lot that we definitely are not paying attention to that we definitely should be paying attention to. And when it comes to the working class being based, where they're capitalized based off our own ignorance, is that there's so many different things that we are capitalized off of, and we definitely capitalize off of each other sometimes too, to where it's just based off a certain ignorance of the things that we probably shouldn't be indulging into, even though that we do. But we'll get to that later. So the next part of this is from Plato. So Plato explores the idea that the real world is an illusion in the allegory of the cave. So imagine a cave in which people have been kept prisoners since birth. These people are bound in such a way that they can only look straight ahead and not behind them or to the side. On the wall in front of them, they can see flickering shadows in the shapes of people, trees, and animals. Because these images are all that they've ever seen, they believe these images constitute the real world. One day, a prisoner escapes his bonds. He looks behind him and sees that what he thought was the real world is actually an elaborate set of shadows, which free people create statues in the light from a fire. The statues, he decides, are actually the real world and not the shadows. He then is freed from the cave altogether, and he sees the actual world for the first time. He has a difficult time adjusting his eyes to the bright light of the sun, but eventually he does. Fully aware of the true reality, he must return to the cave and tries to teach other people what he knows. The experience of this prisoner is a metaphor for the process by which rare human beings face themselves from the real world of appearances with the help of philosophy, perceive the world truly. So are we fighting each other based off philosophy, what-ifs, and beliefs instead of the higher good? A question to definitely think about. And when I read this, I thought this was probably one of the most realist things that I've ever read when it comes to how we perceive our own reality, because how we perceive our reality is definitely true based on what we think that we know as a child. We know all these things that we are taught as a child, and that is how the real world works. It doesn't work like that. Obviously, as we get older, we understand that some of these things that we are taught definitely aren't the way that we believe them to be a true way of going about them. So obviously, we learn about new things. We learn about new ways that other people are thinking about things. We learn about what other people believe in and see if we believe in that thing too, to where it's kind of like a conscious collective group of thinking, so to speak, to where not all the time are we actually thinking individually, we're more thinking about collectively and then trying to reiterate back to us of how we can think about it individually. Something to think about. So this next part is a set of questions. A couple of them are kind of just like straightforward. So I'm going to read these off, and then we'll continue on to this last part that I have compiled of all my other things. So the very first thing is ancestor simulations. Cycles, lessons, bettering ourselves and or society or our environment, or history repeats itself. So we go through these cycles, we go through these lessons, we go through these points of time where we're trying to better ourselves. But is it to the point to where are we repeating these cycles and lessons? Are we actually learning the lessons? Are we actually bettering ourselves from these lessons and cycles? Are we still going on about them in the same way, shape, or form when we're still not learning our lesson? Are we still learning our lessons and cycles based off even our entire society and environment? Are we actually going to the point to where, history kind of does repeat itself, to where humanity as a whole really doesn't actually understand the concept of the failures that we have definitely done that we should definitely improve on? But we will get to that in a little bit. So the next part of that is related to that is there are many simulated realities in one base. So one base. This is the base. And that all the simulated realities are just different branches, different things, different timelines, different things that could happen based off certain decisions. But it's all really just based about what you believe is to be that one base and how you are able to kind of manipulate it, so to speak, to where all those other realities can kind of either intersect with it, to where it all combines into one, or where they all just keep branching into other different things. But that's also based on decision and choices. So that is definitely up to you. So can we control it or manipulate it to our favor, these many simulated realities in one base? Is it singularly or is it collectively as a whole? Are we doing it for ourselves, or is it actually just pretty much to where it's all simulated collectively? So that is definitely something to think about when it comes to how we are able to perceive our own reality, so to speak. 30% of the brain is used. Imagine with more what we could do, the consciousness of species. The universe is not energy or matter, but information. We can 3D print any object, almost any object. And especially when it comes to genes in the human genome, is that we can definitely manipulate them in some ways, to the point to where 3D printed objects, genes, there are probably other different things that are considered simulations or data, so to speak, or information that is pretty much all data. That it kind of goes to the point that we are in a simulated reality, so to speak, to the point to where if all of this is data, then we can pretty much maybe say that we are in a simulated reality because it's all data. Math kind of also has a pretty good place in this, because math is used in many different things, and we can use math to solve a lot of different things too. So math could also be part of that, to where it's all data, it's all information, that it's all just based into the point to where we are in a simulated reality of zeros and ones. The observer effect. This is a phenomenon that happens in physics in which mere act of watching something can change it, which could not make sense in a way if we live in a single physical reality. But in video games, we only render the world when we need to see it. That suggests that we live in a rendered world where reality only exists when it is observed. So we only understand our reality when we observe our reality, that we can only see so much of our reality when we actually observe it. And then it's only rendered so much to the point to where if we need to be able to see it, then we will see it if we actually observe it that way. Next part would be ideas, dreams, and everything important to us are weaponized. That every idea, dream, or things that are very important to us are weaponized against us, to the point to where we can't go chase after our dreams. We can't manipulate it and keep evolving and try to get better and better and better at it, to the point to where everything that is lashed out against us is going to try to make us feel like we shouldn't pursue that in the first place. Next part goes with the whole point of where if it's either aliens, AI, or some advanced civilization using our simulated reality to kind of use us as a battery, so to speak. If we are actually used as a battery, if it's to the point to where, the government is only certain political governments, or all the governments in general, are using us for work propaganda to make a living off of us, to make a buck off of us, so to speak. So yeah, if that's kind of goes to the point of where, however you really think that the simulation or the matrix is really used against us. Some things are out of our control, and we know this. There are many things that we definitely can control, be it either based off our emotions, we can base off of our actions, we can control on our financial status, we can control the knowledge that we absorb. There are probably many other things that we definitely can't control, but those are the things that stand out to me the most, because we can control our financial status, be it either based on just what we want to spend money on, what we want to save money on, what we want to invest in. The knowledge that we absorb, that we can control everything of all the knowledge that we try to absorb for ourselves to make sure that if it's either healthy or not healthy, or even like our emotions, our actions, that we can control those. We can control our emotions. We can control our actions. It just depends if we are actually going to take the time to actually control them or not, or if we're going to lash out, do something stupid, and it's going to end up bringing this imbalance to the balance. The game of life is what you experience of challenges and trials, and it wouldn't be easy if it wasn't interesting. I thought that was actually a really good way to kind of look at it too, is that it's like if you base your life like a game, so to speak, that if it was something that you wanted to invest your money or time into, if it wasn't like, if it was easy to where it's just super linear, you're just literally just following the path of the game that it gives you just so you can reach the end goal and beat it, or if it's to the point to where you also see to where life is exciting, that there are challenges and tribulations, that there are things that you have to go through, that are things that are going to keep you on your toes, there are things that are going to make you keep coming back for more and more and more, so to speak. So like that is a good way to be able to kind of look at life in a good way, is that are you kind of just riding it, or are you pretty much just like trying to be prepared as best as you can for that boss, or so to speak. The next thing would be is that if we can't find time, how can we take it? And if we can take time, how can we find it? I think that's how I said that last take that I was trying to do. But yeah, if we can't find time, how can we take it? If we can't find the time to do it, how can we take that time out of our day, so to speak? The next thing was something that I wrote down for myself, because I found this pretty important to me, to be honest. So, does the lack of knowledge of physics, laws of the universe, biology, psychology, science, ethics, and sociology impede human advancement? Now, you don't have to have a PhD in all of these things. You don't have to be going to school for 10 years to try to understand these things. But the thing is that I feel we should have a basic understanding that we should be teaching people at a younger age in school or even out of school, that kind of helps people propel forward in a way. Now, I don't really know if all of these things are really necessary for human advancement, but I feel like some of these things are definitely important, because then it will help us of how we communicate with people, how we go about certain actions, or how we do certain things, that we have an understanding of our society, that we have an understanding of our economics, that we have an understanding of certain things that happen in life based off of biology, physics, or anything like that. So, as an individual, what are we doing to affect the balance? And this one ties into this chosen one concept that I have written down, to where the chosen one is the bringer of balance that is caused by one's choices, or someone or something upsets it entirely to bring back into balance. So how are you pretty much looking at yourself? Are you bringing balance, or are you bringing imbalance? Are you actually being a cause, or are you being an effect? Are you actually making sure that the decision or the things that you are trying to do are actually going to bring balance, or is it going to bring imbalance to where it's just going to throw the entire scale off and you don't really know what's going to happen? So it kind of gives you an understanding, or a questioning, so to speak, about how you are able to look at the things that you do yourself to see if it's going to bring balance or imbalance in your own life, or even others in general. What we do know and don't. Is it just based on what we don't know and what we do know? Are we controlling others in our lives instead of letting them experience it? Kids, parents, or relationships? Are we controlling how we want our kids to be? Are we controlling our relationships for how they have to look at things? Are our parents controlling us for how we are looking at things? Or are we controlling our parents for how they should look at things? Is that it's all just a base about a thing of that the things that we think that we do know, we don't know. And the things that we don't know, we actually do have an understanding of, but it's very, very minimal. Do we act on predictability or random? Can we actually predict some of the things that are going to happen, or are some of these things is random? Is it coincidence, or is it fate? I'm not really one that's too much into coincidence, just because I don't really think coincidence is that big of a thing, because if it was supposed to happen, there's something that we need to get out of it. There's something. We either learn from something, it's a blessing, it's a lesson. There's something that we can think about of if it's random or predictability, or if it's going to be predictable when it comes to us, or if we are also predictable to other people, or is it just actually just going to be random. So this last part was something that I was actually talking about with somebody. And is it the system or the people who run it? Yeah, the system might not be the best. There are probably many other ways that we can improve our own system, or even just can entirely deconstruct it in general. But if you understand how people work, if you understand how people are mentally, if you study psychology or anything like that, that you do understand that the individuality in this does have an impeding effect on the system, so to speak, because most people are going to react based on their own self-interest. There's only going to be the self-interest part. So yeah, it could be the system, but the thing is the people who are running the system are basing it off their own self-interest, be either based off of greed, land, power, currency, anything like that, to the point to where there's a lot of self-interest that people still run off of. Everybody still runs off of self-interest every day of the week, every month. Like, there's a lot of self-interest that people are still doing based on their own self to give off to other people, or how they're absorbing from other people. There's a lot of self-interest in that. So is it really the system, or is it the people running the system based off their own self-interest? Now, the last one is, what is our purpose? You can define that however you want, but I'm going to tell you right now that most of it is pretty self-defined. It is, because we do have a good self-definition of what we can define for ourselves, for our own self, for our own life, for the things that we want to do for ourselves. It is all self-defined, but we just have to fight everybody else about it if they are pretty much fighting our own reality that we want to make for ourselves. Are they going to break it, or are they going to help us make it? Are we going to make it ourselves, or are we going to let other people break the things that we believe and perceive in our own reality and self? So yeah, definitely a couple things to consider. So this very last part is a bunch of contemplations and conceptions and certain things that I had to take into the things because I watched all the movies. So these were the things that I wrote down because they seemed the things that stood out to me the most. So one more question before we move on to that. So are we algorithms and cycles, or can we escape our programming? Everyone has the individual responsibility to make the choice between the real world and the artificial world. Something to think about. So The Matrix, the movies, Neo is pretty much the representation of free will, or make life as you make it, so to speak. He has those points in time to where he is questioning if he actually is doing it based on just because that it's the right thing to do, or it might already be the choice that was already presented before him to already make, because it could just be just based how he is as a person. So Neo kind of definitely integrates that whole point about it to where it's like, know yourself, know what you're trying to do, understand that not all the decisions you make are already going to be the ones that you're already doing, because there's multiple ways to do about it, because we do have free will. It is questionable sometimes if we do have free will, but we do have free will. We have the freedom to do whatever we want. But the thing is with the Matrix is that the Matrix is considered a paradox. It's either free will or destiny. That is the paradox. It's either because it was destined for us to happen. It was destined for us to do it this way. It was destined for human race to either crumble or advance. Or it is based off of free will, because every human being can make the free will to do whatever the heck they want to do. Be it either break out of the system, be it either make their own decisions, be it either make that they want to go do that, so that is their decision, that is their free will. Nobody else can stop them. Nobody else can influence them otherwise. That we do either have that decision, so to speak, or the choice to either how we want to look at it, of either based off of free will or destiny, one of the two. So the very first thing that I have written down was that, are you a user or an NPC? Now, you can use everything in our system, everything in our reality, everything that we have already made into our system. We can use it to our advantage. We can. Most people don't really want to go do that just because they think that it's not the right thing to do, that we shouldn't even use anything in the system in the first place. But there's a lot in our system that we can actually use. We can use it to our advantage. We can use it to other people's advantage. We can use it for a lot of betterment. And the thing is that it's just like, it just depends on how you really want to use it. Or are you an NPC? Are you just somebody that's kind of just okay with going with the flow? That's all they want to do is just chill. All they want to do is just distract themselves, so they just keep going to work. They keep going to sleep. They keep waking up doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Or is it to the point to where you're going to be a user and you're going to make that free will decision? You're going to use the things that everything that the system has given to us to use it for your best advantage, for your own self-propelling movement forward. The next part is the perception of reality. It goes along with Plato's allegory of the cave, because we do have an understanding of what our own perception of our reality is. It's literally all just based on what we learn for ourselves, that what we are taught is how we think that the world works, when it really doesn't work like that, because we learn about all these different things. We learn about how other people view about things. We learn about other things that could possibly happen or not happen, or we think that it's going to happen this way when it's not even going to happen that way at all. So the perception of reality is pretty much all this based about how you really want to make it. You know, it's based off of intuition. It's based off of self-definition. It's based off of the self-interest and the accountability of the person, the individual, you, me, whoever else, the individual. It is all based on your own perception about how you want to be able to look at things, how you want to be able to go about things, how it's going to serve your best interest. Are you actually taking accountability for your actions and your choices, or are you actually just kind of just going to the point to where you don't have any choice at all, that your perception is what actually is going on around you, when it all really kind of just depends about how you look about it mentally. If it's going to affect you mentally, it's going to affect you outside. But everything on the outside doesn't have to affect you up here. You can perceive it however you want to be, even regardless of that. Some people will literally look at all the things shittily that have happened to them, and they'll still feel like they're blessed. They'll still feel like that they're meant to do these things, that it's going to be okay, that there's always a positive light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how much crap, no matter how much darkness is thrown at them, that there's still a way of being able to look at that perception of their own reality. So the next part is decisions and or choices, because you can make so many choices out of you want, but there's still the decisions, and you can do the decision if you want to. So decisions of choices are pretty much based on what's doing right, regardless of punishment or outcome, or even trying to understand the choices that we have already made, to the point to where it's like sometimes we do kind of feel a little helpless about some of the things that we are doing, but that's all this based on the decisions and the choices that we make. We can have so many different choices presented before us, and it's all based on if we want to decide to do them or not. We can try to understand the decisions of the choices that we have done the entire time. And that's the thing, is that anxiety kind of has a good understanding of this, because it's like we will try to understand why we made that decision in the first place so many goddamn times. We will look at it about almost every different angle that we can look at, just so that we can try to understand that decision of that choices that we have, even though the decision of the choices that we have made. The thing is, there are so many other different choices that we could have done regardless. Sometimes we'll think, well, I'd already decided to do this, so that's the best bet. But even though you don't really have to do it like that, because there are still multiple choices. You can still even decide to choose over something else if you want to, because it is all based on your own individual decision at all times. This kind of goes next to the point to where it's like, is it the path that you are making, or is it that destiny thing that's where it's like that path has already been made for you, that path is the only thing that you have to follow, even though sometimes the path is looking like this and then it'll fork. But sometimes, no matter which way you take, usually it kind of always comes back to the same path most of the time. It either is or isn't. It kind of all really depends. But it just goes to the point of where it's like, is it the road that we already know, or is it a road that we don't know at all? Because sometimes we'll take those roads, we'll take those paths. We already know what's going to happen, and if we decide on going down that path, that is all that shit that we already knew was going to happen, be it either based on jobs, be it either based on emotions, be it either based on actions, be it either based on things that we are constantly doing that are not actually good for us to do, or we can go down that road to where we don't know what's going to happen. We can't really decide on the choice that we have already made of going down that path that we have no knowledge of what could possibly be down there, be it either good or bad. But it's all based on the decisions and choices pretty much. So this next one was something that I kind of wrote down for myself, is because that it's the biggest thing I feel when it comes about the whole matrix thing of either evolving or de-evolving. Like, there's a way that people really describe it somehow, to where some people are okay with just hoping that this entire system that we have for our society, or the entirety of the world in general, that if it comes to the point to where it all crumbled down, it all come to the point to where all of a sudden it's just like we're living off of survivability of harvesting, foraging, hunting, and pretty much still establishing these tiny communities to the point to where other countries are still living like that in general. But the thing is that it's like all of a sudden now we have to decide if we want to do that or don't want to do that. And I don't really think that it really needs to go to that point to where we need to de-evolve, so to speak, to where we are living in forests and huts and all these other things, even though that there are some people who are already still living like that in general, to the point to where why can't we use our system to evolve more? Why can't we use our system and pretty much manipulate it to the point to where we can fix that system? If we don't believe that our system is not, if we already believe that our system is not something that we can save, why would it come to the point where we would just give up? I mean, this is my own personal opinion about this. It's because that this was the one thing that really I wanted to speak about, was just because that it's like, I don't think that it is necessary for us to have to de-evolve, to have to go to these points where we are only living on the basics, so to speak, to the point to where we can't use our system to evolve it, to fix it, to we actually can all move for betterment. Now, there's the whole thing too, to where it's like when it comes to about bringing balance. Now, some people are probably going to want to stay back. You know, some people aren't going to want to move forward or evolve at all. And that probably might go to the whole point of balance, to where some people do and some people don't, just so that some people can move forward so that the other people don't really have to do that. It's really all just based about how you want to adapt to it, so to speak, to where it's like you yourself as an individual are always evolving, but it always comes to the point to where how we can evolve or de-evolve collectively as a society, as a human race, as a whole, you know. So that was the big thing that I really was constantly going on about. And the thing is that this kind of ties in with history repeats itself. Because even though regardless we have certain established governments that have crumbled over time, you know, to the point to where it, like we were peaking, it came to the point to where all of a sudden it crumbled, everything was setting on fire, other people or another country or another group was trying to take over that stuff to the point to where they had to go to the whole point of where they're hitting rock bottom again, just so that they can propel up more. But the thing is, like, when it comes to the whole point of even if we were going back to the whole survivability stasis of harvesting, foraging, you know, and living pretty much just based in tiny, tiny communities, that what's still going to stop people from being people? What's still going to stop people from how history has repeated itself, to where it's like people are still going to be people. People are still going to fight over everything and anything, to the point of when it comes to resources, land, or even power in general, to where if we de-evolve, that's not going to stop. That's why it kind of goes to that whole point of if it's either the system or the people. The people are still going to be people. People are animals. We are still animals in a way, to where we are still based in the animal kingdom. Yes, we are a lot more advanced than almost all of them, you know, and yeah, like, I mean, there are some animals that are smarter than us. But the thing is that it's like we don't really need to be thinking about it to where, like, yes, we are animals. People are still going to be people. We're still going to be going on impulses. We're still going to be being humans, because what humans can do. And I don't really think that de-evolving is really going to help with that. It's not, and I mean, of course, even if we evolve, it doesn't mean that people aren't going to be fucking people. But the thing is that it's like, regardless, no matter which way we go, that people are still going to be people. We're still going to be fighting over the same things that we are still fighting to this day today. Like, it's not going to stop. I do not think that it's going to stop, regardless if we evolve or de-evolve at all. So the next part, it's either a group simulation or a personal simulation. Now, that's what I was talking about with the whole box thing in the beginning, is that most people could probably assume that most of this is just a personal simulation, that it's only about what we experience personally that is either keeping us in these cycles or of keeping us in these lessons that we still need to learn over and over and over again. But at the same time is that it's like there are also the group simulation things that where it's like regardless is that it's like people being people advancing in society or as a whole entire civilization as a whole, is that it's like it is also a group simulation. So it's where it kind of goes neck and neck. It's tied together to where the personal simulation is definitely going to affect the group simulation. But it all depends about how much that person in the personal simulation has evolved on their own for how it's going to possibly affect the group simulation, of where it's going to be to the point to where if that that one person is not learning the cycles or lessons or the things that it needs to actually learn for betterment or self-improvement, that it probably will affect the group simulation as a whole. And especially if they go into something that is making an impact or making a difference, it definitely depends on what that one person is doing of how it's going to affect the group simulation. And even when it comes to the point of how we kind of collectively think in a way to where it's like if you're in a room with 5 other different people and you all are talking about one thing, that there's still the whole point of where it's all one group collective thinking, that there are still, yes, everybody has their different opinions, but the thing is that it's like it still goes based about how you want to absorb it, for how you want to continue to go about it on your own. So the personal simulation is always there because everybody is simulating something. We're either simulating the fear, we're either simulating the anger, we're either simulating the love, the laughter, and affection that we are giving off to each other, and to the point of how it is also affecting the group when we feel that. The personal simulation to the group simulation, to the group simulation to the personal simulation. That was a good way to be able to look at it, because when I did this last take, I didn't even do that at all. So everybody is playing their own game in a way. Is that it's like when it comes to the personal simulation, everybody is playing their own game to either improve, affect, or anything like that, of trying to reach the end goal, to where it's all everybody's playing a game, their own individual game, to kind of to have this whole group collective game going on, to either are we going to evolve, are we going to de-evolve, are we going to actually make sure that we survive as a human race, or are we just going to say screw that and we're all going to crumble and we're all just pretty much going to fade into nothing, you know? History repeats itself, but I don't really think it has to go to that point every single time. So it's also having to understand is that, do we have another chance sometimes? Do we have another chance for fixing the things that we did do wrong? Do we have another chance collectively as a group simulation to actually make sure that we can keep going, that we can actually have another chance to improve, even though that we have done so much wrong in our entire past in general? You know, of how we're constantly hating each other, we're constantly fighting, going human to human, to where we are constantly implementing racism, we are constantly putting in sexism, we are constantly fighting each other over land and power. Like, throughout all of that, is there another chance for us to still keep going forward? Is it all still based on coincidence of that actually happening, or is it all just based to the point to where, yeah, it happened, but now we can have that chance to fix it? Something to think about. This ties into the next one of manipulating for favor. Like, there's a little bit of controversy, I feel, with this, but I don't really think it's a lot, just because that manipulating for favor definitely is something that happens in our reality. We manipulate others for our own favor sometimes, and if you want to say that we don't, you're a fucking liar. Just saying that. Even though regardless that we are manipulated as a whole for that 1% even favors, that it's like the manipulating for favor is always there regardless. People are manipulating me for favor. I'm possibly manipulating other people for favor. There's like a whole other thing that to where there's always something that's manipulating something for favor, for someone to get something out of it regardless. And I mean, that's a good and a bad thing. I mean, minimally, that's okay, but drastically, that's bad, obviously. Like, that's completely freaking bad. And I mean, of course, people shouldn't have to manipulate people for a favor. People shouldn't have to manipulate others just so that they can get that one goal for themselves. But I mean, hey, you know what I mean? Look at like collective consciousness when it comes throughout some of history, to where some people are following leaders that just decimate other societies or other cultures or anything like that. You know, to where it's manipulating the others so that they get that one favor. Something to think about. So the next one is belief and trust. Your belief and trust and my belief and trust. We all have different beliefs. We all have different trusts about certain things. Some people trust people. Some people don't trust people. Some people are okay with other people having other beliefs. Some people are definitely not okay with having people's beliefs. But my belief doesn't mean that it has to impede on your belief. And just because that you have a different belief doesn't mean that I don't have a reason to trust you. But the thing is, there's a damn reason for why I wouldn't be trusting you or your belief in the first place if you're disrespectful. That is the whole point of when it comes to human interaction, is that it's like, are you showing them the disrespect for your belief and trust, or are you actually reciprocating something good? Because everybody has a different belief about everything. It's the same thing with this. But when it comes to belief or trust, is that my belief is that regardless, is that it's like, I want people to propel and go forward. I do want to see that. Regardless, in some way, shape, or form, before I die, I want to fucking see it. I don't know how I'm going to see it. I don't know what the hell is going to happen. But that's the thing, is that that's my belief, is that I want people to actually improve altogether. Either if you trust me on that or not. It's even to the point to where it goes to the point of my belief of like, if I get a lot of money, then I'm going to make sure when I do, you got to make sure you speak your reality. But it's like, if I did, to the point to where it's like, you don't trust me that I'm going to give back, even though I say that I want to give back, how are you going to like trust me or not? Like, of course, nobody's knowing what's going on up here except me. So the point to where it's either you trust me or don't trust me. That's the whole point of going about that. But if we all want a future, we all want it. We all want to make sure that we have a legacy, like that we have a future for our legacies, for our kids, our grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, that we kind of need to be together on that, regardless of what we believe and trust or not. That's the thing. Like, regardless if you believe in my trust about that, belief in my belief or not, that it's not something that you really need to constantly fight about all the time. I don't need to be fighting you about what your beliefs and what you trust or don't trust, or if you trust me or don't trust me at all. The thing is that it's like, if we all want to propel forward, we got to be able to figure out how we can do it all together, regardless of beliefs, regardless of who we trust and don't trust. Is that if we all want to move forward, then we will. But we have to make sure that we make it work somehow based off of just what we believe or not. So that one tied into, never mind, it does not. That's the next one. So the next one is fate. Are we in control of it, or is it written, coded, or manipulated? So fate ties into the path that I was talking about earlier. Now, is it fate? Is it destiny? Is it free will? Or is it being something that is written, coded, or manipulated into the simulation? Or is it actually something that we are writing and coding ourselves? You can believe it however you want to believe it. But the thing is that it's like, regardless, is that it's like when it comes to certain things that some people do get their just desserts if they are doing terrible, terrible to people, terrible to others. I mean, that's the whole thing of karma, or if you believe in karma, or if it's just the whole point of that. But it's like, there are reasons why things happen, and I'm not really one to believe in fate or coincidence, because there's a reason why things happen for a reason. There's a reason why certain things happen in our lives, for us to have to understand if it's something that we need to learn, if it's a blessing, or if it's a blessing in disguise, and it was actually something that we just needed to learn from and just let it go for. There's a lot that you can base that around, but that ties into the path and of the decisions and choices that I was talking about earlier. So, but it also has to understand about to where it's like, what are you willing to sacrifice for new beginnings? Are you willing to sacrifice a lot of different things based off, just so that you can reach the path that you want to go to for those new beginnings? Are you willing to sacrifice your old life? Are you willing to sacrifice the old habits and the toxic ways of thinking, or toxic ways that you're going about with people or talking to people? Like, are you willing to sacrifice those for a new beginning so that you can actually make yourself a path that you actually want to follow? Or is it just something that to where you believe that just because that you're negative, you're a negative Nancy, so you're always going to stay like that, or you're always going to think that regardless of what happens to you that you don't get good? Because your perception is your reality. If you keep telling yourself that, it's going to happen. It's going to make you're going to pretty much program your brain the entire time in thinking that you don't deserve those things, that you are not worthy of that you are not deserving enough for that path. If you keep telling yourself that, because our perception is our reality. Most people already have a straight understanding of that. The next part is the system/control. So like I said, everybody has a different way of understanding of how our system affects us, if it's actually good or bad, if some of our political governments are actually just trying to control us, or if it's to the point where we're pretty much just like manipulating ourselves and exploiting ourselves, thinking that we are when we actually aren't. But I mean, you can see it. You do understand that. People do understand the point of how we are pretty much, the mind is shackled or imprisoned based on fear. The fear of other countries attacking us. The fear about how it is across the other side of the country. How it is in other countries that other people hate us is because that we are like this. Like, it doesn't have to be like that. We don't need to be imprisoned based on fear. We don't need to be imprisoned on thinking that just because I hate something, that I'm so fearful about it that I don't even want to know anything about it, that I'm just going to react irrationally about it just because that I'm fearful of it. But the thing is, we're scared of a lot of different things. We're scared of people. We're scared of natural phenomenons that are going to destroy either us individually or collectively. There are many things that we have to fear. many things. But the thing is, if we can't get past the whole idea of fear itself, then we are constantly going to be stuck in fear. And Robert Greene was the one that quoted that, just because if we literally are constantly getting rid of the idea of this, the fear base in general of just fear, then we can get over a lot of different things. But I don't think it needs to come to the point to where we constantly need to be worried about other people or how other things are going on, because like a terrorist group is the reason why we have to hate a specific culture, or just because that another country hates us, so the point to where they have a reason to fear all of us, just because that some of us in our own system are being a bunch of dummies. Like we shouldn't be implementing that fear factor onto other people, just to even have the basic necessities of fear for some things that we fear of moving to a new town because it scares the piss out of us, because we don't know anybody, we don't know the area, and we don't know if we're going to actually succeed in that town. There's a lot of things that we can implement with that thing, but the system and our control of what we are being controlled of, if we are actually being controlled based on fear, which most people kind of already do, we already know that we are being controlled based on fear, then that's the only thing that we have to get over. But the thing is, if we want to make a difference about it, if we want to change that factor, then we need to fucking do something about it. That's the only thing I'm going to say about that. End of discussion for that one. So I'm going to step off a little bit for that. And the next part would be knowing the path and walking the path. So going back into the decisions and choices of the path and belief and trust of our path is that we know sometimes the paths that we need to take. But the thing is, are we actually walking it? Are we actually living by the rules and standards that we set for ourselves? Are we just knowing about them and not doing a damn thing about it? Are we actually living the life that we're actually telling other people to live? Are we actually living or telling other people that we are living? Or are we actually just living and based on just so that we can tell people about it and did not actually do it at all? Not change a goddamn thing about us. Not change a goddamn thing about what we're actually doing in the first place to make sure that we are actually bettering ourselves. Are you knowing the path or are you walking the path? There's a difference. Next part would be senses are impulses in the brain. There's a point in the Matrix where Morpheus is also telling Neo about this. What is real? If it's all about based on what you can smell, touch, and taste, then they are impulses sent to the brain. If it is all about based on just because I can touch my wooden desk right now, that I know that it's wood, that it's real. But what do I know that is actually really real? How do I know that this is like wood? I think it goes to the point of like why we called certain things, like why is it called wood? Why do we call it water? Why do we call the sky blue? Like I think it's all this, like I think that's what that's supposed to kind of reference. I mean, that's what I'm taking from it anyway, but senses are just impulses of the brain. All the senses, all the different things. We all have a different sense. We all have a different way of going about our senses. Like some people taste different things when they taste the same object. Some people smell different things when they are in the same car, to where some people will say it smells like shit, but other people say like, oh no, that smells fine. Like senses of the brain. So history repeats itself. That's the next one. But instead of talking about what I've already talked about, I'm going to talk about the exploitation of that. The human versus human. Since we are constantly fighting each other all the time, that we are exploiting each other 24/7. So that because that we have pretty much pitted us against each other for a long goddamn time, but it also to the point to where it could be that point of where the system or control is pretty much putting us against each other all the time, so that it's like, yeah, we have consistent race hate the entire time, that just because we think that we're not equal, just because of the color of our fucking skin. Or if it even comes to the point of sexism, because some people believe that men are better than women or women are better than men, where it's like that shouldn't be a contest. It's even the same thing for race. It's because that somebody is a different color than me. You're not different than me. You're just a person. Like, it's all based about how you act as a person that's going to make you how I'm going to think of you as a person. Not based on what you look like, not based on color of your skin or your gender or anything like that. It's all based about how you are as a human, how you actually act, how you actually go about your day-to-day. How are you actually treating people? Are you treating people like shit? Do you treat your animals like shit? Do you treat your entire life like shit? Like, it's all based on that. Screw the freaking whole point of where I have to think like we have to fight each other because we're different. No, I ain't gonna do that. Nobody should be doing that. But I mean, can I actually really stop that myself? I mean, I'm gonna try my best, but it's not gonna be to the point to where I know that I can just stop it in the snap of a finger, because it's not gonna happen like that. It's not. We actually need to understand that we need to stop pitting each other against each other, That's how history is going to repeat itself. That's how it's going to keep happening, because human versus human, the person being a person, how I was just talking about earlier, that's what's going to make it happen, of where history is going to repeat itself, where we're constantly exploiting each other 24/7. The system could be exploiting us 24/7. If we're going to do something about it, we need to change it. Next part is exploited by means of an illusion. So exploiting it to where it's like taking advantage of based off an illusion, to where some people are taking advantage of us, so that it creates an illusion of fear. There's even to the point where we do that with each other. We do that with each other all the time. The thing is that we actually have a consistent illusion in front of us all the time of how we, like the base way of thinking about things. Because we have the veil over our eyes, we have the fog and constantly in front of our face 24/7, that's our illusion. That's our exploitation, because that's how we are constantly exploiting each other all the time. Like, some people don't really mean to do that on purpose. There is that factor to think about too, to where we are possibly exploiting each other without having to think that we're actually exploiting each other. The way that some people go based on trauma, how people communicate through trauma or anything like that, is that it's like that is what's creating the illusion. And the illusion of what you have already experienced yourself, of what you have already gone through, and how you're having to move into a new chapter in your life, or you're trying to be better or anything like that. Like, you have to let go of some of those traumas so you can actually learn to get a hold of that. That's the thing, is that having to understand of what is an illusion and what isn't an illusion, because what you're probably already thinking when it comes to negative thinking and spiraling, that's probably the illusion. That's the fear-based thinking. That's the point to where we are constantly based around fear. And fear is the one thing that we definitely need to get the fuck out of here all the goddamn time. The next part is capitalization off of ignorance. So, as I said in the beginning of this video, to where we are capitalizing off of each other. It's not to the point to where it's even just the system, but we ourselves as people are capitalizing off of each other's ignorance, to the point to where if somebody doesn't want to do something, but I know that I can do it, so I'm going to charge you so I can do it for you, that's still capitalizing off of ignorance. Even when it comes based off of sinful things to do, we capitalize off that. Alcohol, sex, probably another couple other different things that I can think of, but we do capitalize off that. So it's just to the point to where, yeah, sometimes it does kind of seem like the consumerism is pretty much just to the point to where we're constantly just capitalizing off people's stupid bullshit. But I mean, ignorance is bliss. That's the thing, is that some people don't really give a fuck, and that's okay. If you don't give a fuck, you don't give a fuck. That's completely fine. If you are okay with doing that, that's fine too, because you have the free will to do anything that you want to do. If you want to invest in, if somebody's going to invest in that, I mean, hey, you either accept it or don't accept it. That's the thing. Next part would be cause and effect, or balance. So as I was talking about earlier, the balance, but even my last video that I was doing with the Hermetic laws, is that cause and effect is always something that we have. Cause and effect is always something that we know that goes around us 24/7. Are we being a cause? Are we being an effect? Are we bringing balance, or are we bringing imbalance? Because every decision that we decide to, every action that we take, every thought that has arisen in our mind is always going to cause a cause and effect regardless. It's either going to bring balance or bring imbalance. We just have to decide about the things that we do. But in the system, if it comes to that whole point, is that it's like, how can you be a cause and effect as more than that, than just for your personal simulation? Is it to the point of like, how are you being a cause and effect for everything around you? If you're trying to make a difference, a deep, big impact, how are you doing it? What's going to be a cause? What's going to be an effect to it? Yeah, there's always something that happens to where if it's like, if you do, like, regardless if it's a good cause, there's a possibility of having a bad effect. But the thing is that just because there's also the bad effect doesn't mean that there also wasn't a good effect. So it's pretty much to where you have one answer or you have one problem and two answers, and it's either, and you got to pretty much work with both. That's kind of the way that I have to think about it. I mean, in a way to where it's just like cause and effect, and balance or imbalance. So another way to look at the whole point of balance and stuff too would be how they do it in the Matrix movies. So Neo is the free will. Life is what you make it. But the thing is that it's like Neo needs Trinity to be like the one, because you can't have the one without one or the other. So it's like you need both of them to be able to do it. But the thing is, when it comes to the balance, or the agent of chaos, so to speak, Agent Smith is the agent of chaos, the one that brings the impurity of the balance. He's the one that upsets it so that Neo / Trinity pretty much has to be able to help it. Because without some of Trinity's decisions, Neo wouldn't be there. And without some of Neo's decisions, Trinity wouldn't freaking be there. So, like, it all pretty much goes into the trifecta of Neo, Trinity, and Agent Smith about the cause and effect of the balance and the imbalance. So another way to look at it. So the next one is everyone acts out of free will, but also doesn't. This is what I was talking about when it comes to the group thinking. I'm pretty sure. But the group thinking, if we're all grouply, collectively talking about something and it sparks an idea in you, or they're trying to impede something on you or put something on you, either good or bad, is that it's like you still have the free will to decide to do it or don't do it. That's the thing. You still have any free will in any decision because it's still based on the decision. It's still based on if you're going to do it or if you're not going to do it. So, I mean, yeah, we have the group collectively, and that might not, and that's where we don't have free will, to where somebody's putting on an idea on us. But the thing is, we still have the free will to decide to do or do it. But if we just say screw it, be like, okay, and you don't even know what's going to happen, good or bad. Yeah, that's not free will. You're pretty much just going along with the flow. That's the NPC thinking right there, to where if you make the decision, you still have the choice of either you're going to do it or not. Or if you decide to just say, screw it, I'm not doing either, and I'm going to do something else. Like, you have the free will to do it. But so we do, but we don't have free will. The next one would be denying impulses denies of what makes us human. So this is controversial. You can either look at it as a yes or no. Denying human impulse is what makes us human. So we have impulses just like any other animal, like I was talking about earlier. We have those impulses. But the thing is, to deny us that is what denies of what makes us human. But that's also that's a little bit controversial, because it's like some people don't really like the certain impulses that humans have. But I mean, at the same time, is that there are points in time to where we can't really control our impulses sometimes. Take that as you will. But I mean, some people are willing enough to not do those impulses so that they can freaking just move on in a better way. But I don't really think that denies us of what makes us human. That pretty much going with the impulses and just going based off of impulse denies us the chance of free will. That denies us to the point to where it's like we're just saying screw it. That's written in our DNA. That's written in our coding. That's written of how it's already supposed to be. So I'm going to do it like that. But the thing is, you don't have to do it like that. You have the free will to do it, or if you want to or not. Impulses or not, you have free will. And the very last one is evolution or extinction, the evolving or the de-evolving. But the thing is that it's like, are we trying to evolve everybody, or are we just going to say screw it and everybody's fucking extinct? Like, I mean, take that as you will. But I'm going to assume that most people are going to take the evolution route instead of the extinction route. Just saying. But most people aren't really consciously thinking about that all the time. Even if they're just thinking about their own self, their family, themselves, anything like that, is that it's like most people probably won't really think about that. They're going to think about the evolution of their family or their legacy or themselves. They're not really going to think about the evolution of everybody else. But if we all know that we have a conscious way of wanting to be better, if you're like me, to where we all want to move forward, we all want to move better, then it's just like, how can you not want to make sure that we evolve? I don't want to see us go extinct. I mean, yeah, we're humans. We have done some stupid shit, stupid fucking shit. But the thing is, I don't really think that has to the point to where I don't have faith in humanity. Like, I have good faith in humanity, regardless even if we do something stupid or not. Because it's like, yeah, we're like a virus, so to speak. Agent Smith in the movie talks about how we are pretty much a virus. And I mean, that is kind of basic. Most people understand that, because it's like we have screwed up so much that it's like all we do is take, and we don't give. We don't give back. Like, we use the earth for so many resources, but the thing is, we don't give back to it. We don't plant new trees. We don't we don't find a way to make sure that we can actually have other natural resources that can replenish them over time. Oil, gas, anything you want to do like that, is that it's like we don't give back. But the thing is that it's like if we do, I mean, it doesn't mean that it's going to really make us like any better. But the thing is, we should be giving back. We should be helping us to where if we are only on this world, if in any of our lifetimes, if anybody who's watching this right now, if we don't reach another planet, if we don't do anything like that, what's going to happen? We're going to go extinct. But I have faith in us that we're not going to do that. I know that we are already on the precipice of trying to go to someplace else. But that kind of feeds into the whole thing of if we are a virus, if we are not, if we're going to evolve, or we're just going to keep going extinct. But I mean, hey, you take that as you will. I don't really know. Damn, that was a good one. That was a real damn good one. Honestly, shit, I did a take before that, and that was trash compared to this one. Complete trash. But this one was a damn good one. So I'm proud of myself for doing this. This was actually a damn good fucking video, even if I had to spend almost 3 hours doing it. You know, I've had to do a lot of takes. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. You know, like the Matrix is the Matrix is what you make it. Like, that's what I like to be able to think about it, is that it's just like, regardless, you have the free will to be able to do whatever the fuck you want. If you want to see people evolve, you help them evolve. You will take that damn step to make sure that they fucking evolve. And if you don't want to, that's fine. But as long as you're not impeding on other people that are trying to make a difference, that are trying to make an impact. I mean, not everybody is the most influential at making a different fucking impact. But I mean, hey, what can we do? An impact is an impact. Making a difference is making a difference. I'm going to make sure that I make a damn fucking difference. I'm just telling you that right now, because I have no other way of explaining about how I am as a person, about how I just want to make a fucking difference, because everybody wants to make a difference in some way, shape, or form. And if we want to do that, we're going to make sure that we do anything in our possible power to go get it at all times. So without further ado, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please comment all of your stuff. I want to hear it. I don't care if it's negative or not, but if it's negative, I'm probably not going to respond, just so you know. But like, comment, subscribe, and share. Tell me all your little juicy things that you want to talk about, and I will talk to you guys soon.